All right, welcome everybody. We are just going to jump right into it. I want to wish all of you a happy Friday. I am live from the courthouse. Let me remove my thumbnail just so that I can come on camera and tell you what the hell just happened in the courthouse. And trust me when I say, and I told y'all I was going to be fair, Brendan Paul literally just flipped the house. Give me 1 second. I need to put my phone in do not disturb so that I'm not accidentally kicked off of the live. But here we go. Here we go. Give me 1 second. And we're gonna get into it and I'm gonna tell you what just went down. Give me 2 seconds to remove this thumbnail. How's everybody doing? Do you feel like the government, and please pardon, like, you know, I don't have like a direct really good light, but that's not the point. Baby, when I tell you that Brendan Paul just walked up in this mofo and flipped the house and backdoored the feds, and let me just say this, that's why I'm not really sure how I feel about granting people immunity and forcing parties to testify when they really don't want to testify. Because a lot of times when you're forcing them to testify, you're typically wanting somebody to say something that would be in your favor. And Brendan came in, he was honest, he let me just say this. He came across as honest, but when I tell you he gave them absolutely nothing, and it was almost like a standoff at one point between between the one of the prosecutors or the on the government side that was questioning him, because at one point she wanted him to elaborate on the freak offs. So she asked him about Jane Doe. Did Jane Doe participate in the freak offs? He said yes, she did. She said, to your knowledge, are there any other women that were girlfriends of Mr. Combs that participated in the freak offs? He said, no. Watch this. She said, and when I tell you, I feel like she gave him the nastiest stare. She says, I'm going to ask you again. Did Mr. Combs have any other girlfriends that participated in the freak offs? And he said, my answer remains the same. No. I can respect an honest man. I can respect a person that says, I'm going to come here. I understand that I have to testify under oath. And I also understand that if I lie, I am going to go to jail. Now, Brendan has already served time in jail because he was caught in Miami and he had on him possession of cocaine. We're going to get into that. But I like the fact he didn't come here and elaborate. He didn't try to put 20 on 10, and the government was pissed. But that's on you. That's on you. Because what Brendan did today, first of all, extremely likable kid. I'm gonna say he's about 27 or 28. Listen, I made detailed notes, and one thing that I was able to notate is the white men on the juror loved him. At one point, I could see the lead juror leaning forward, listening to him intently, would back off a little bit, write down some notes. When I tell you they loved him, and not just the white man, there's also another man, I'm going to name him Lenny. Lenny loves him. Lenny loved Brendan. Man, and I just thought, what the hell was the government thinking? Because what Brendan was able to do is to present for the courtroom. And remember, we're looking at this as everyday people. He made it look like the government is really exaggerating this case, really dragging this thing off, and really getting into the personal life of Diddy and trying to turn it into a RICO. Now, I'm going to be fair because last week I said the government did a really good job of establishing a RICO, and so did other content creators, right? So you can trust me in that. Do you also believe me when I say today they dropped the ball real bad because you put Brendan on the stand. The defense did not put him on the stand. You did. And the fact that you put him on the stand, listen, the defense was supposed to have 90 minutes cross-examining him. The defense cross-examined him for maybe 20, 25 minutes and let him go freely to move about the cabin. Brendan is on the first thing smoking. Brendan went home, y'all. Brendan was supposed to be on the stand until 1 p.m. Didn't even need it. Baby, when I tell you the defense, it's almost like the government set up a layup for the defense today. But let's get into it. The jurors, I wrote right here. I got notes upon notes. And I wrote, the jurors love Brendan. And I wrote, he's a likable kid. He's educated. The defense did a good job of drawing out. Listen, you're exaggerating. when you say this kid was a drug mule. Brendan, can you tell us about how much the value is that you were caught on your person with the coke? He said 3 to 500. The defense said, does that seem like a huge drug operation? Would that not indicate that that's for personal use? He said yes. So, of course, the government objected to that. It was sustained, still had to refrain his line of questioning, but they did a really good job of saying, listen, to those of you in the jury, without saying that, and those of you in the courtroom, this is just a case of the government being nosy, putting their nose in somebody's business that seems to have a kink for freaky shit in a hotel room that has consent from women, in particular, a particular woman likes to do drugs, likes to kind of let their hair down every now and then to relieve and blow off a little steam, whether it's true or not, right? That's what Brendan was able to establish by being on the witness stand. Now, let me tell you, so I wrote down this. Brendan projects very well. He's about 6'2", clean cut, looks like, I'm just telling you the psychology of it. Walk through that courtroom, listen, right, wrong, or indifferent. You already know what I'm talking about if you can read between the lines. I keep asking myself, why did the government force this kid on the stand? He's believable, clean cut white boy. So most people, especially in the jury, are probably more prone to believe what he's saying. And he did not testify on your behalf, federal government, prosecution. He made great eye contact. He spoke well. He articulated. He was yes, no. Wait a minute. Can you ask the question again? He had on a nice sky blue suit, kind of red. His face was a little red, probably from being nervous. Now, keep in mind, Brendan was supposed to take the stand on Tuesday. Today is Friday. So he's been here waiting in a holding tank for 4 days, right? He did an excellent job considering all of the background, all of the disruption. Because, life is not perfect. Maybe you can anticipate a day of delay, but 4 days, you would think he would crumble under that pressure, but he did not. He established his role for Combs Enterprise that he was hired mid to late 2022 to March 25th, 2024. The reason why that day is important because he worked there up until he was arrested in Miami Airport on a private jet. And they asked him, where were you headed that day? He said he was headed to the Bahamas. He worked for approximately 18 months. Um, he had possession of coke. The government said, can you tell us how did that cocaine get into your bag? He said, yes. After a hotel night, I was actually doing a clean sweep. Watch this, very important. I was doing a clean sweep of Mr. Combs' room, of one of the hotel rooms. And this was left behind, so I took it. I took it with me. Here's why I say this is important. Because there's always more than one person in that room. How does the government know who it belonged to? Now you can't establish if it belonged to Diddy, the escorts, any other celebrities that may have been in the room, Jane Doe, anybody. The fact is, he testified when he went to, because they do hotel cleanups after hotel nights. The assistants set up the room. They also go in and clean up the room out of respect for the maids and also to kind of sanitize and minimize any damages that would incur damages or incur any charges for Puff, right? So when he was in there, he got it, put it in his bag. Number two, Diddy didn't ask you to do that. That's why I'm thinking, what is the government thinking? He put that in his bag. So you can't say he was running drugs for Diddy in that instance because he just put it in the bag, right? Watch this. Okay. He graduated in 2022. He was interested in studio and music production. He testified under oath that he was happy to be working with the likes of a billionaire, to be able to learn the business side of music. Okay. He said he interviewed for the job with Mr. Combs in late October, November of 2022 in Los Angeles at his Los Angeles property. Keep in mind, one of the properties in Los Angeles that they often refer to in the court is the house that Diddy purchased for Jane Doe. This is called the Mapleton property, right? And they asked him, how were you onboarded? Who onboarded you? He said, I was onboarded by the other assistants. What did they tell you? So they wanted him to testify and exaggerate that somebody brought him in and told him to do wrong. He said, no, that's not what I was told. He said, I was told to get in and get out. They said, can you elaborate? What does it mean to get in and to get out? He says, learn as much as I can in the industry, establish a good book of business, buy solid clients, and get the hell out. I feel like they were wanting or hoping that he would say something like, KK told me I had to run drugs. KK told me this, that, but he didn't give them that. They said, okay. And remember, this is the government testing. Uh, this is the government examining him on direct. They asked him about the interview process. He said he arrived to Mr. Combs's home. Um, and it was about a 20-minute interview, and he was offered the job. But because he had previous obligations, he actually started the job 4 days later after the interview. They put different photos on the screen and asked him, can you identify this person? Can you identify that person? Who is this? Who is that? What was their role within the Combs enterprise? I'll run it down one by one. Who is this? KK. What's her role? She runs the enterprise. Who is this? Let me go back. What's her role? He says she's the chief of staff. She runs the enterprise. Did KK introduce you to Mr. Combs? Yes, she did. What did she tell you? She told me to lay low until it was my time to meet him. Did KK have access to Mr. Combs's device? Yes, she did. What would you often see her doing with the device? Is it responding to text messages, emails, and just kind of corresponding to different communications that would come in regarding Mr. Combs about bookings, studio, music, appearances, and things like that. Can you identify who this is? Yes. Who is that? That is Jonathan Perez. Who is this? This is Frank. What was Frank's role? Frank's role is a butler. What was Jonathan's role? Jonathan's role is an assistant. Okay. Can you tell us what the role of the assistant is? Absolutely. The role of the assistant is to ensure things run smoothly, make sure we pack the bags, make sure we post on social media, we speak with other assistants, we establish group chats, we just make sure that the day-to-day norm runs smoothly with little to no interruption. Okay, so he established that, right? We also need to know Mr. Combs' whereabouts, if he's safe, what he needs, and always, he said, our job is to keep him happy. They said, okay, what's the difference between being an assistant within the Combs enterprise versus being a butler? He said it's very, very similar, with the exception that the butler would have more of a specific focus on personal details, like if Mr. Combs needed an umbrella, if Mr. Combs needs chapstick, if Mr. Combs needs a bottle of water. That role, those kind of small things would lend itself to the role of the butler. They said, we giving you a binder. Can you take a look at the binder? He took a look at the binder. So they said, okay. They put another photo on the screen. Can you identify who this is? Yes, that's security. What's his name? His name is Fahim. Do you know Fahim by any other name? Yes, Fah. How do you spell that? Foh. Who is Fahim? He's the head of security. Who else do you know? Somebody named Duke Ellington. All right, they didn't have a photo of Duke Ellington, whoever that is, but they did put another photo up of a black gentleman. Can you identify who this is? Yes, his name is J9. Tell us about J9. What is his role and function within the organization? J9 is a driver, and he's primarily based in Los Angeles. Okay. Let's see, how many hours per week did you work while you were employed for Mr. Combs? I worked 80 to 100 hours per week. How many days per week? 46 days per week. Did you ever have any days off? Or were you off? Were you truly off on your days off? He said, not really, because I would be on call. How much money did you make when you accepted the job with Mr. Combs? I started off at 70K, $75,000 per year. How old were you? 23 years old. And then I got a raise where I was promoted, where I got a pay increase, and I started to receive $100,000. How often were you paid? I was paid on a biweekly basis. Who wrote your checks or who issued the checks? My checks were issued by Combs Enterprise. Okay. Where were you primarily based? He said, I would commute between Los Angeles and Miami. In between the commuting, where would you stay? He said, I would stay in Airbnbs. Who else would commute? KK. Where did KK stay in Los Angeles? KK had an apartment on her own in Los Angeles. When KK was in Miami, where would KK stay? She would stay at Two Star Island. What is Two Star Island? That's one of Diddy's properties in Miami. So KK would stay with Diddy when she was in Miami, but when she was in Los Angeles, she had her apartment. However, he, as an assistant, would have to get an Airbnb. Are y'all following me? All right. So then they said, did you always travel privately with Mr. Combs? He said, no, I didn't. Not all the time. What would happen when you did not travel privately with Mr. Combs? I would have to take commercial flights. Okay. And he said, I would normally go early. A part of the reason for me not being able to travel all the time with Mr. Combs on his private jet is because as an assistant, my job was to get there early. She said, what does that entail? That means I go early, I set up the environment, I set up if there's an event, I make sure things are seamless. I make sure the location is secure. I make sure everything is ready to go. Who else would travel with you? The stylist would also travel with me. He said, um, who would book the travel? He established a girl named Jessie, but her real name is Jessica. They said, did you ever, or can you verify how much money Mr. Combs made? He said, no, I can't. So you've never heard Mr. Combs talk about how much money he would make? No. You've never heard Mr. Combs, he said, I've heard assistants talk about how much he stood to make from appearances with Deleon. And sometimes that would be to the tune, based on gossip. Remember, this is hearsay. That would be to the tune of 150K per appearance, per appearance. And they said when he would do club appearances, who would go with him? Typically security, a few other assistants, that's all. Okay. Is there a time that you had to go days without sleep while working for Mr. Combs? Yes. How many days of sleep? Can you tell us what happened? He said, one time I had to go days without sleep. How long were you up? 3 days. Where were you? I was in New York. Did that bother you? Watch this. Did that bother you? He said, no. I was young. And because I was young, I could do it at the time. You're let me continue. He said I could handle it. Did you ever use drugs while with Mr. Combs? He said a rare use of coke, and I would also take prescription Adderall. They asked him again, but in a different way. So you did use drugs while with Mr. Combs? Yes. He said again, a rare use of cocaine and a prescription Adderall. How did it feel for you being and working for Mr. Combs? He said it was intense. And what was the expectation for you, in that role? What made it intense? He said, my job was to always make sure he was happy. When he said that, he started to smile, right? He said, because Mr. Combs will not take no for an answer. So then he goes on to give an example of where he made a mistake. And this is when we all started laughing. He said that Diddy, he actually got fired one time because he forgot Diddy's Lululemon fanny pack. Diddy had such an emotional connection to a blue Lululemon fanny pack. And when Brendan forgot it, Diddy fired him. They said, what happened? He said, I went to Lululemon and purchased another one, but KK told me to lay low, go hang out at the Airbnb until he calms down. I laid low in the Airbnb and then I got my job back. That was funny to hear that Diddy got so emotional over a damn fanny pack. But anywho, let's continue. They asked him, um, did you ever witness Mr. Combs do drugs? He said, yes. I witnessed him do coke, weed, ecstasy, sometimes in his home, and sometimes I will witness him do, just sometimes in his home. They asked him, so then they show this exhibit of this plastic small container. It had like blue squares and this small container, right, of pink powder. They asked him, what are we looking at? He said the pink is called what they call That's like a mix of K and Molly, if I believe I heard correctly. The blue squares were ecstasy, okay? So then they said, have you ever purchased drugs for Mr. Combs? He said, maybe on 1 to 2 occasions. This is hilarious. One time, Diddy sends him a text and said, hey, can you get me some Zens? They said, what does Zen mean? He said, Xanax. So then they show this exhibit, right? This text message on the screen, which they enter into as evidence, where Diddy's asking Brendan to get him Zens. Brendan says to Diddy, I think I may have 2 leads that may be able to get it for me by tomorrow. They said, did you get it for him? He said he didn't get it from me. He got it from somebody else. Diddy wanted those Xanax so bad he couldn't even wait. But at least Brendan was honest. He said he didn't get it from me. I thought that was hilarious. He said he got it from somebody else. Do you know who? No, I don't. They asked him, have you ever had to personally purchase anything from Mr. Combs? He said, yeah. Weed. He said Diddy likes 2 strands of weed, and the purchase that he made is actually was in the amount of $3,200. Okay, and sorry about that. Somebody came and took a photo of me. So then they showed him a photo of somebody. They go, who is this person? This is the person named Philip Hines. If you remember when I first started my second week of covering this case, Philip Hines is actually an assistant. I used to work for Diddy, but it's also an alias that Diddy used to use when he would check into the Beverly Hills Hotel. Got it? Okay. So how many times did you purchase for Diddy? I'm sorry. He said less than 10 times. And then when you did, were you reimbursed? Yes. About how much did it cost when you would have to buy him weed out of your own pocket? He says between $3,000 to $5,000, and also other assistants would get him drugs, right, for personal use. They asked him another. So then they put all these photos up of the drug dealers. Here are the names: Rio, One Stop, Obi, and Baby Girl. They don't have a photo of Baby Girl. They don't have a photo of One Stop. I wonder if One Stop is Ray J. I wonder if One Stop is Ray J. And I want to know, I'm nosy as hell. I want to know who Baby Girl is. Baby Girl, either they're protecting you or they just don't know who you are. But I'm going to leave it like that. I'm going to leave it like that. Okay. Then they put up another photo of somebody named Guido. That's also a dealer that's based in LA. He said he's done transactions with Guido 2 times. They said, how did you meet Baby Girl? They pull up like a group chat. Jonathan Perez actually introduced him through text communication to Baby Girl, right? And he would instruct him, listen, this is who you go to as your contact for A, B, or C. They pull up a photo as evidence of this nice black Gucci pouch. They said, who does this belong to? He said it belongs to Mr. Combs. The point of the government pulling it up, particular drugs would go in a Gucci pouch, and then other drugs would go into a different bag. So the Gucci pouch, they said, where would he have this? They said sometimes in his bedroom and his nightstand, just throughout the house. But when we would get a particular drug, we would load it in a Gucci pouch, and when we would pack his bag, we would make sure he has his pouches. And I guess that also includes that damn fanny pack from Lululemon. Reason why I had to mute it is because somebody came by playing music, and I don't want to get copyright, for the music. So then okay, let me ask y'all something. I don't know, and I hate to sound dumb. They said, have you ever had to provide prescription drugs or picked up prescription drugs from Mr. Combs? He said yes, and he said Cialis. What is Cialis used for? I haven't had time to Google. I came straight out the courthouse. I jumped on my phone and give you a line. He said Cialis. He's picked up the prescription for Diddy from the drugstore. And they also said, they said, what name would the prescription drugs be under? He said, Frank Black. Okay. Have you ever picked up non-prescription drugs for Mr. Combs? He said, yes. What were they? Xanax. Okay. He also established by being on direct from the government that Diddy would have 2 phones. He had a red phone, which is his personal phone, and he also has a yellow phone that's his business phone. So I talked to you about Diddy asking him for Xanax, but I guess he took too long and Diddy found that from somebody else, right? So then they have this group chat that they entered as evidence where Brendan is asking for to be reimbursed for $5,190. And the reason why he needed to be reimbursed is he listed it $4,200 for flowers, $125 for a store run, $55 for personal online, $780 for Gucci items. The total that he needed to be reimbursed was $5,190. Did you hear what I said? You remember I said particular drugs go in particular pouches. The Gucci drugs go in the Gucci pouch. The other drugs would go in the Lululemon fanny pack. All right, Lululemon, Diddy just took your stock through the roof. You may be able to recover, okay, if you hear this live. But anywho, drugs. I said, oh, they say, were you ever asked on any occasion to try drugs by by Mr. Combs? He said yes. On one occasion, he was asked to try drugs. What was the drug? He said Tussie. Why were you asked to try the drug? He said Mr. Combs wanted me to try it to see if it was good. What happened? Why did you take it? He said I wanted to prove my loyalty. So you took Tussie. Yes, I did. How did you feel? Y'all, Patty, I'm sorry. Give me a second. Shit, Brendan said he felt euphoric. He felt good. They said, had you ever done it before? He said, no, I have not done it before, but you felt euphoric. Yes. Were you able to continue your job that day and work? He said, absolutely. I bet you were. They asked him, does he have an understanding and a clear knowledge of what date nights are? Yes, I do. Okay. What does that involve? He said that involves Diddy, his guests. Typically, that means they're going to party, they're going to have sex, they're going to do drugs. They're also going to probably have some alcohol, and they party for days. This is where I continually say stop forcing people to testify and expecting them to lie on your behalf, because in that moment, he nullified any strong argument that the government has or has established, in my opinion, because he made it seem like, listen, this is what these celebrities do after hard work, after weeks work. They go, they rent out these rooms, they rent out these suites, they rent out these floors, and they party for days. And then they go home. Let me ask you something. Does that sound like a big deal to you? Explain that way, because that's exactly how he explained it on the witness stand. And he flipped the house when he laid it out like that, because what he was able to do is he made it seem like the government, like I said before, you're exaggerating. You're exaggerating that all of these things are happening when this is just the norm for these people. These billionaires, they can party for days at a time. They're gonna do a little coke, they're gonna do some Xanax, they're gonna do all that. They're gonna go to fancy hotels, they're gonna get them girls up in there, they're gonna cook. I mean not cook. They're gonna order all this food, but guess what? This is the norm. This is what I'm telling you that his testimony came across as. This is the norm. This is nothing outside of character for anybody that you talk to in this industry. But let me continue. He said he understood date nights, he understood the parties involved, he understood his role. This is when they asked him. She walks to him. Let me tell you. So the lady that was examining him, she walks to him. She says, and she puts down a sticky note. She said, I just gave you a sealed document. Do you recognize that person? He said, yes, I do. She said, without saying her name, we refer to her as Jane Doe, and I'm asking that you do the same. He said, absolutely, of course. They said, do you recognize her as Jane Doe? He said, yes, I do. Did she participate in freak nights? I'm talking about freak nights, freak offs, hotel nights. Yes, she did. This is when they told you, remember I said he did not cooperate? He did not want to lie. They said, who was she to Mr. Combs? He said, one of his girlfriends. Did Mr. Combs have other girlfriends? Yes, he did. Did the other girlfriends participate in freak offs? This, he said, not that I'm aware of. She says, I asked you, did the other girlfriends participate in freak offs? And he said, not that I'm aware of. So what this made me think is you prepped him to say yes. And he got on the witness stand and said no. And when I tell you the government was pissed, because she asked him and she paused, y'all, like this. He stood his ground. Now here's the thing, government. You brought him. So if he's not credible, that's on you. Because you brought him here on the taxpayers' dollars. And you held him here for 4 days. Let's continue. They put up a schedule of the schedule just kind of outlined what Mr. Combs' schedule would be for that week, where KK would just say, okay, on Jane Doe is flying in. I got her gift coming. She's going to land early on Wednesday, February 8th. We're going to do Wild King night for her birthday. Brendan, I need you to make the reservation. They asked him, what does she mean, make the reservation? He said, I made the reservation for Nobu Restaurant so that they can eat and have a good time. What's Wild King night? He said, listen to this. They said, can you tell the court and explain to the jury what is Wild King night? He said exactly what it says. I told you everybody, well, most people love Brendan. The jury loved Brendan because Brendan is a college graduate. Brendan comes from an astute background. Brendan has a very, very healthy relationship with his father, which the defense did a really good job of honing in on. And the fact is, he said exactly what it said. Do you understand what was happening? You're not going to get me to interpret anything outside of what's in that text. I'm not going to make up an answer for you just to satisfy you. Wild King Nights, as he responded under oath, is exactly what it says. Nothing more, nothing less. Let's continue. He did establish the hotels of the Freak Nights. Uh, I don't know how to say this word, so I'm gonna go to the London Hotel, the Edition in Miami. The London is in LA, and Elmertage. I don't know how to say it, but that is in New York. Okay. Um, they had Wild King Night. He did establish and testify under oath. That was at Jane Doe's house, the Mapleton property, right? That's the property that Jane Doe referred to Diddy as our home. Okay. They had a freak off there that he set up. They asked him, what did you get? Towels, baby oil, fruit, water, toiletries, snacks, water. They said, why did you pick up towels from Walmart? Guess what he said? I'm not sure. Government, again, I ask you, why did you bring him here? Is there an expectation? Can people be intimidated? Let me ask you something for those of you that are tuned in. Do you feel like that people that have testified under oath in this trial on the behalf of the government that were forced to testify, do you feel like they felt like they had to say extra in order to not go to jail? Or do you feel like Brendan is just acting a fool? Let me ask you that. What are your thoughts? So then they go on, they enter into evidence a cabinet in a bathroom, y'all. It's loaded with baby oil, Astroglide. They say, what is this? He said, this is in Jane Doe's house. It was about at least 60 bottles of baby oil, at least 30 bottles of Astroglide, and all that freaky stuff that they use in those freak offs, okay? Um, Watch this. They asked him, have you ever had to purchase Astroglide or baby oil for hotel nights? The juror that I nicknamed the lead juror leaned forward again, and he said, yes. I made a note that that juror is not interested in the free costs. That juror is not interested in the party. That juror is interested in the technical aspects, not the other stuff. That's the same juror that will pull off the headsets when he had to listen to the free costs. That juror is the juror that I've nicknamed the lead juror. That juror, I truly believe today, based on his leaning in and leaning out, depending on what was being said, he is listening for a RICO. He's listening intently and he disconnects when it's about the bullshit. Does that make sense? If it's bullshit, he don't want to hear that. That man is here for the reason that y'all told him, because there's a recall. If there's any mention of anything, he'll lean in, he will make notes. If not, he tunes out. I wanted to share that note with you. All right. Um, They asked him, why did you go to the hotel rooms? Of course, for the cleanup. He said a lot of times the hotel rooms would be in a disarray. They did show the room after the freak off, y'all. Listen, when I tell you, I don't know why Diddy will pick all white rooms, like hotel rooms with white furniture. Why would you do that if you know you freaking off? But they would cover it with sheets and towels. When I tell you they showed that evidence, sheets, towels would be all over the floor, all over the furniture. They did some wild stuff in there. And they asked him, why did you take this picture? He said, because he needed KK to know that they were probably going to be charged for damages in that room. Okay. That's why that photo was found by the FBI in his phone. Okay. They also, I made a note. Brendan Paul, my note says, Brendan Paul does not want to be here. He's managed to influence the lead juror to disconnect. He's also managed to influence the courtroom to feel as if the government is questioning, as if the government's questioning is somewhat petty over parties that people have. I also, they showed a photo, right? They showed a photo of them on a private jet. It was KK, Brendan Paul, and it was P. Diddy. They said, is this a private jet? Watch this. Brendan said, yeah, but not his. Yes, it is, but it's not his. If he would not have said that, you know what it would have left us with? The impression that that was P. Diddy's private jet that he was using to do something illegal. And that's why I say you have to keep your mind open when you're in the courtroom, because both sides do a good job of driving the narrative that they want you to hear, the jury to hear, and me to hear. And if the key witnesses and the people on the witness stand are not forthcoming, if they're not honest, then we don't know. Brandon said that is a private jet, but that's not his private jet. And not only that, he had to rent that jet. Does that help? Not to establish innocence or guilt. Oh, a B. But I think it's important that we have as much information up front, right? I don't want to be misled. Do you? So I think that's why he made a really good witness today, because he gave us more than enough information, and it was technical information that could actually make a difference in the outcome of this trial. Can I continue for maybe 3 more minutes and we're going to wrap it up? So the government says, so you took a charge for coke? Yes. What's the status of that case? He said, my case was dropped because I have a good attorney. They said, when was the last time? No, they said, when was there? Have you been in communication with Mr. Combs since the day of your arrest? He said, zero. Have you seen him? Absolutely not. I'm going to ask you again. Have you spoken or have you talked to Mr. Combs since the day of your arrest? He said, zero. Okay. Now, Brian still gets up to do his thing to cross-examine Brendan. And when I tell you the jury woke up, this, I made a note. Let me see. Let me get my note really quickly. Okay, hold on. Give me 1 second because I want to make sure I give you what I wrote. I put the jurors like Brian still. Lenny likes Brian still. And the reason why I cannot give you too much information about the juror that I've named Lenny, because it would be obvious who he is. Lenny likes Brian still. The lead juror likes Brian still. And Grandma likes Brian still. They woke up. Everybody was paying attention. So Brian cross-examines Brendan. And what he begins to do is he is immediately raised the bar for Brendan in a good way. You got to remember, these are scholar people, astute people, learned people. So Brendan actually kind of sat up a little bit to meet Brian where he was. Now you're talking about men of equal playing field, right? Similar backgrounds, not law school, but just probably come from similar backgrounds, similar family. So Brian, in my opinion, raised the bar, right? Brian, watch this. Watch the psychological play. There's a psychological play that's called positive before negative, where you always tell a person something positive about themselves and then you give them the negative. So Brian established Brendan as a dedicated, hardworking kid, Syracuse graduate, academic scholar, ACC academic honor recipient, positive before negative. He gassed him up. Brendan was eating it up. The jurors were eating it up. And this is why I say he has the credibility and he won over the jurors because the jurors looking at this like, this is a nice kid. He's not a drug mule. This is a nice white kid that comes from a great background. You've made a mistake, government. So then Brian still establishes Brendan's relationship with his father. He said, you and your father are fairly close, right? Yes. You tell him everything, right? Yes. And your father has helped you with A, B, C, D. Yes. What's the psychology in that? The psychology in that is to say that if this basically what he's creating for the jury is that this kid has a father. This kid, his dad's not going to just let him work for a criminal enterprise. This kid comes from a good background, and you best believe this. If he was working for a criminal, then his father would step in. I like how Brian did that, right? So then he says, I wrote, damn. He got Brendan to say that he wanted the life of being around a billionaire. He said, you were excited to work with him, right? Right. And although you came from this background and that background, and you were in the studio before you met Mr. Combs, the access that he gave you excited you. You were happy to be around a billionaire, right? And have this lifestyle. Brendan said, yes, 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 I was. He said, so your job was to support him, correct? Yeah. So you would expect that you would have to stay up sometimes longer than anticipated, right? Right. But you're built for this, correct? Because you played basketball, you did this, you've shown discipline in your past. I mean, you are that kind of guy that'll get a job done. Brilliant on the behalf of Seal, right? Brendan said, yeah. I made a note. Hold on. At this point, the lead juror, his forehead was kind of wrinkly. I don't know if he was marveling at Brian or marveling at Brendan, but I made that note. So still um, established how much was the coke. He said 300 to 500. The coke that you was charged with, right? That was caught up. I mean, that you were found with when you were arrested. That's correct, right? So you're not a mule. Brendan said correct. Can we say that that's typically what people have for personal use? There was an objection. Then Brendan said, yes, to my understanding. But the government, this is what Brian is saying, but the government is sitting here making it seem like this is a huge operation. Of course, the government objected in that moment. Brian had to rephrase his question. So Brian said, do you consider Mr. Combs' drug use to be personal? Brendan said yes. Um, have you ever witnessed or have you ever been privy to Jane Doe participating in hotel night? He said, yeah. Did she ever seem concerned? No. Did she ever seem hesitant? No. Did she ever seem like she was being forced or coerced to participate without her consent? No. Of course, they objected to that. They go on. You said that KK ran the enterprise. Yeah. Do you mean criminal enterprise? No. Objection. Objection, Your Honor. Okay. At this point, I made a note. The judge was eating it up. He was kind of smiling as if, you know what? This is what I came for. Let him fight. So then Brian rephrased the question and he said, you wouldn't work for a criminal now, would you? He said, no, absolutely not. He says, but according to the government, you did. But according to the government, you did. What do y'all think so far? Hold on. Brian said, was your case dismissed? Yes. For having coke on you, basically, yes. It was just a small amount, correct? Yes. Would you consider that personal use? Yes. Objection. And Brendan was able to real quick say, I only had 3 to 7 grams. I only had 3 to 7 grams. He said, when you say everything in that, when you told the federal agents that everything in that bag belonged to you, did you realize that drugs were in that bag? Or you did not realize that drugs were in that bag, correct? Brendan said, correct. So watch this. I don't know. That's what I'm saying. Feds, you put him on the stand. So if he's not credible, to me, that makes you not credible because that's your key witness. Let's continue. He talked about, tell me about the time you had to stay up three days. How did you feel? Was it exhilarating? Brendan said yes. You wanted to, right? He said, I don't know about wanting to have to stay up for 3 days. He said, but you got a raise right after that. Is that correct? Did not Mr. Combe elevate you from $75,000 per year to $100,000 per year immediately after you had to stay up for 3 days? He said yes. Did you or did you not get a lot out of this opportunity? Brendan testified yes. Brian still ends with this. You testified. Well, let me ask you this. Do you feel like you're indebted to Mr. Combs? Brendan said, what you mean? He says, you receive immunity from the government, correct? Yes. And they forced you to come here to tell the truth, correct? Yes. No further questions, Your Honor. Listen, no further questions, Your Honor. So then the prosecution comes back to cross-examine Brendan, and we'll get into that a little bit later. I've been out here for 47 minutes. That's all I got for y'all. I've been out here way too long. I'm going to go back into the courthouse, and we're going to get into part 2 of the day. Brendan is gone. This was a huge misstep on the behalf of the government, in my personal opinion, right? Just sitting there, me saying, what the hell did you just do? Sometimes you got to know when to hold them, and you've got to know when to fold them. You get what I'm saying? Huge mistake by the Little House on the Prairie team. Maureen was pissed. Maureen Comey was pissed. And I know that for a fact because I saw her on the elevator and she was standing behind. Look, I'm everywhere like a damn cockroach. But listen, I just move real quietly throughout the courthouse. I be quiet. I move. I see everything. But anywho, she was on the elevator. Xavier Donaldson and Nicole Westmoreland was in front of her. And she was like this, y'all. Pissed. Not happy. But guess what? You did it to yourself. You was winning. You should have sent them home. You should have sent them home. You should have said, Your Honor, it's been 4 days. Mr. Paul is tired. We've kept him here. We're going to strike this witness from taking a stand. We're going to remove him. We don't need him. You was doing a good job. What are y'all's thoughts? Yes. Camille said a college-educated white guy that can spin it. That's exactly what he did, okay? What did they say in redirect? Hold on. Oh, at one point, the government was pissed. So she gets back up. She says, you testified and under cross-examination that this was an unbelievable opportunity for you, correct? He said, correct. That this was an amazing opportunity for you, correct? He says, correct. She says, how did your career end with Mr. Combs? He said, I was arrested. Y'all, she made up ground right there. He said, I was arrested. Listen, I don't know. What are your thoughts? Did the government go back and deconstruct all of the good work that they did earlier in the week? What are your thoughts? Hold on, Sheba Baby Talk say, I am screaming. Look, she was pissed off at him. She was pissed off. And this was not Maureen Comey. I don't know this one. I don't know her name. She was so pissed. Oh, you said you had a good time with him? Yeah, I had a good time. You said it was amazing? Yeah, it was amazing. Exuberating? Yeah. How did your career end? I was arrested. She was like, get the fuck out of here. So that's all I got for y'all. Listen, y'all, we try to make it a little bit. I'm gonna give you the facts. I'm gonna put a little bit of humor in it, but I'm telling you what's happening on both sides. I'm giving you behind the scenes moments that I'm privy to. I told you last week that man, the press that got caught with his phone in the courtroom. I saw him today, but he went to the 24th floor. I feel like he didn't want that smoke today. I think he didn't want all the eyes on him. So that's all I have for you right now. I will be back a little bit later. Until then, you all enjoy your day and happy Friday.